This legislation is called the Natural Resources Restoration Act. In the Senate, I'm honored to be joined by Senator Landrieu as a co-author and also Senator Marco Rubio of Florida as a co-author. I'm the lead author. And in the House, several House members are supporting an identical bill. The lead author is Congressman Jeff Landry, and he's joined by others including Congressman Steve Scalise and Congressman Bill Cassidy from here in Baton Rouge. The idea behind this legislation is very simple. It's about the NRDA process, NRDA, Natural Resource Damage Assessment. That is the process, very complicated, very long process in federal law, under which there will be a full assessment of natural resource damages coming out of this event. And then there will be some assessment on, monetary assessment on BP and any other responsible parties to pay for mitigation and natural resource work in light of those damages. Now, as I said, this NRDA process is very long, very complicated. And an event this big, it could well take 8 to 10 years. One problem with that is we need to start some of this important environmental mitigation work now and not wait 8 or 10 years. So this legislation would accelerate and front load that process by taking 30% of an estimate of what the overall assessment may eventually be and getting started now as soon as possible on the ground with important restoration work. Obviously, BP would be given credit for that. They wouldn't be double billed, but we'd get to start doing important restoration work now rather than waiting 8, 10 years down the line. This is strongly supported by many stakeholders involved in this process, including, importantly, Garrett Graves, who's the governor's point person on coastal issues, including on this NRDA process. Finally, let me point out that today I sent a letter to Lamar McKay, chairman and president of BP America. You should all have a copy of that letter. The letter points out our legislation, but also asks BP to negotiate in this direction whether we immediately pass this legislation or not, because they could come to the negotiating table and agree to do this with the federal and state stakeholders. We've asked them to do that before. We've asked them to sponsor specific projects before that would be covered under the NRDA process. Billy can talk about that more. To date, they have not done that in a significant way, and this letter is again asking them to do that so we can start the important natural resource mitigation and recovery work now rather than wait 8 more years for the entire NRDA process to work its way through. I'm very hopeful that through this legislation and or through a negotiation we'll accomplish that and we'll start this important work much sooner rather than much later, because time is not on our side in terms of environmental damage, and the sooner we can start that work, the better the result will be. As I said, I'm very honored to be joined here today by Billy Nungesser, president of Plaquemines Parish. He was the leader, bar none, in terms of the coastal fight day in and day out, and he's seen so many of these issues and continues to see them firsthand. So now I'll turn it over to Billy. Billy?
Thank you, Senator. I'm glad to be here today, and I too want to recognize those 11 men that lost their lives and still praying for their families. That night, almost a year ago, when I stood in Venice and listened on the Coast Guard radio as they pulled those men out the water, standing by with the ambulances from Plaquemines Parish, hours after hours till wee hours of the morning, we couldn't understand why they wasn't bringing those men to shore. 24 hours later, they started the trip to Fouchon, 4 hours away. Looking back, that's the first bad decision that was made, and it continued to snowball. Never was there one person in charge. Still today, a year later, I can't tell you who's in charge of this. We continue to get denied, whether it be for cleanup crews early on or now we've begged for restoration and shoreline stabilization. We've tried everything from oyster shells to rocks to sandbags that can be seeded to stabilize the bank, where every day we lose several feet of land. What's happening in the heavy impacted areas like Bay Jimmy, Passalutra, the oil is picked up off the bottom and dumped into the marsh in a small thunderstorm. After 4 or 5 days, the grass is dead and that bank line begins to deteriorate. When 4 or 5 feet of that land falls into the water, the next thunderstorm picks it up and moves an additional 4 or 5 feet into the marsh. So every day it's critically that we're losing land in these areas, land that will not be replaced. And time again, we've presented plans to stabilize the bank. That's just one issue. As we look at the adult fish, shrimp, crabs that were able to swim away from the oil, we don't know the long-term effects on the eggs. The state has asked several times Wildlife and Fishery to provide fish hatcheries where we could start raising fish in the event we see a decline in the adult population of the fish. We've been snowballed all along. They don't tell you no, they just don't tell you yes, and they drag you along so far that it becomes a moot point. And then you have another issue and another. I don't think in Plaquemines Parish, since the president said we're at war with the oil, and Thad Allen said your man in charge can do anything you need, we have not gotten 1213, which is the report we fill out, approved. We asked for Ocean Boom day after day after day to put across Barataria Bay that we knew would have kept the oil out of that bay, the Ocean Boom, not the Orange Boom they sent us. We never got the first order, and that's criminal, that they continue to be able to deny the things that we needed to save our coastline, our wildlife, and now stabilizing the bank. And as the senator stepped up here and introduced this bill, but once again, we ask BP, you have an opportunity to step up to the plate and do the right thing. Come forward and put some money up front so we can get started on saving our coastline, our wildlife, and our whale life. Thank you.